Music theory with Microsoft Excel. Chords named by mode and modal half steps. This time adding another layer of information for better classification of the modes, that being the use of color. So get ready and some coffee because you ain't never seen rockin' unless you excel at rockin'. And if you don't have Microsoft Excel at rockin', then you don't even know what rockin' is, for crying out loud. Here we are in Excel. If you don't have access to this workbook, that's okay, because you could just follow along, possibly building the part of the table we're currently working on. If you do have access to this workbook, though, 4 tabs down below, including a very colorful fretboard tab, which we will refer to, the example tab, in essence the answer key, the prior presentation tab having information from a prior presentation, which we will use to help populate the current presentation as we work in the blank tab, where we started with a blank worksheet starting from scratch, but did so in a prior course or section, this time working on the added dimension of color. So let's go on over to the fretboard tab, giving a reminder of our objective. We want to be maximizing the use of color to best understand music theory in the most optimal way and use of the color, as well as to create tools to navigate the fretboard. Here's an example of the fretboard with the low or heavy E string on top. An example of the tools that we can use is mapping out each fret with 2 tiers of color, 2 tiers of information. The first representing the point, which could be the note point, or it could be the modal point. The second representing distance, which we could recognize with the modal distance terms or the interval types of terminology. And we can use color to map this whole thing out as well, using 2 different color schemes, one for the points and one for the distance. So this can be a very practical way to be able to envision and visualize the fretboard and music theory that can tie everything together. That's the idea. So let's go on over to the blank tab and think about how we can add color to our chord information. So now we've got a color system for the notes, we've got a color system for the modal points, and we've got a color system for distance. Now, what are chords? Chords are kind of like modal points, but we're grabbing multiple locations at the same time. So with our analogy of the world, the planet, and the modal points, the 7 notes that we're working on being the continents, we're actually grabbing multiple continents, multiple locations at the same time. So you can think of it maybe as a tour that we're going to be taking to 3 of the 7 continents, right? We're going to grab those and kind of tie those together, and that's going to be the idea of it. So we can think of it kind of as a color system for the points. So what I'm going to do then is map onto our chord creation the color system that will be tied to the modal points. So it's going to be an absolute color system tied to the modal points. Now, as we think about our chords, we'll revisit kind of the chord construction as we build the color on top of this, remembering that the normal chord structure that is used isn't very logical in terms of making it easy to fit in a 7 chord collection, because the focus was more on stacking the thirds on top of each other instead of working with a collection of 7 notes that are always in one collection of notes. So again, if you were to make this more logical from a playing standpoint, what you would do is say, hey, look, I'm just going to build a chord off of each of the nodes that we are on, and then simply use our normal chord construction, which would be that we skip every other note, which you could call a modal whole step. That's how you build a chord. So you can build a 3-note chord off of the Ionian, the Lydian, and the Mixolydian, and it will be what we call a major chord. Why? Because we're starting on the node, which has a distance of a third, which happens to be 4 notes away, which is the defining factor of a major mode and therefore a major chord. Whereas the 2, 3, and 6 will be minor modes. So that general idea, we'll kind of discuss it and think of a way that we can basically give a color coding to our to our chord system. So let's give a recap of how we can do this. How can we put the color into this system? So what I can do is I can say I have the number, the letter. I want to add now the same stuff we had in our prior presentation. I want to add the shape, the hex, and this bit right here. And then I want to add this bit over here and this little table. So we'll do it one at a time. Let's add these 3 bits. So I'm going to go in here and say, I'm going to put my cursor on the C and go 3 over, right click and insert. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to the prior tab and say I'm just going to grab my colors, Control C, and we will put that, boom, right there. Now I'm going to delete this top part because I want it, because it's got 2 header columns. So I will right click and delete that and shift the cells up. Bam. All right. So there's our colors, and then over here I'm going to add the shape to it. So I'm going to double click on it and say and give me that shape right there. And I'm going to copy it down to remove the colors underneath it. So I have all the same color system. They're all blue right now. And I'm going to make these all the green. So those are our 2-tiered kind of color system. Let's center these. I kind of like them centered. I'd rather have those centered. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let's build out our modal points and give a color system for the modal points, which you would think you'd start on Aeolian or the A, but I don't want to start on the A. I want to start on the C because that's the thing we work in most, so that I can get the modal points, which would be the same as the note points if we were in the key of C, but what we're going to do is keep it constant, so all 12 collections of 7 notes could use this color system. So in other words, if we're using the color system based on just the note names, this will be the color system. So in other words, an A, which is a 1, is red. A sharp or B flat, which is 2, is orange. B or 3, note 3 is yellow. C or 4 is yellow green. C sharp or D flat is going to be, which is the 5th note, which is green. D or the 6th note is spring green. D sharp, E flat is a 7th note, it's cayenne. The E is the 8th note, sky blue. The F is the 9th note, blue. The F sharp, G flat, 10th note, violet. G is the 11th note, magenta. G sharp, A flat is the 12th note, which is rose. Now these are the middle, which you can think of kind of like as the middle of C4 on the piano that we're going to imagine here. I'd rather call it the 0 point, starting not from C, but from our note names, the 440A on up. Okay, so then I'm going to use my formula, whole, half, whole, half, to give me the notes in the key of C, and then we'll color code those notes. So we've got these pulled over, and I'm going to color code them based on this color. So I'm just going to grab that. Now that is not conditionally formatted, it's just normally formatted. So I'm going to go over here and I can put that then on both of these. So this is not using conditional formatting, it's just using the standard color formatting here. So we'd hit the drop down, it'd be like here, drop down. Oh no, I messed it up. Undo, and then drop down, boom, boom, and then there's the number of the color for our yellow green. All right, so then I'm just going to use the same color system all the way down. So I'll just I can grab this whole bit. Let's just grab this all the way down. I think I could just grab that color, format, paint that right here. Boom. Now I'm missing the letters over here. So I'd like to add those. So I'm going to right click and insert. And then I will make this no formatting on this one. And then here, I'll make this a little wider, will be our letters. So this will be I, D, Y, no, this will be P for Phrygian, Y for Lydian, X for Mixolydian, A for Aeolian, and the N, because it's backwards, for Locrian because we didn't want the L's because they were causing us problems. All right. So then here, I'm also going to put I want to put another column so I can have the numbers. So I'm going to put my cursor up here, right click and insert so I can have numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'd also like to have the abbreviated letters over here as well. I don't think I really need them again. I have them over there, but I'd rather have them nice and tight. So I'll insert and then say this is going to be equal to the I, and this will be the D, this will be the P, this will be the Y, this will be the X, this will be the A, and this will be the N. All right, and then we'll make those. Let's make those bordered. All right, and then I'll double click tightening these up. Okay, so let's just color code those same colors. So I'm going to say all of these for that top bit will be green. These will be the spring green. This will be the sky blue. This will be the normal blue. Normal blue, right to here. And then this will be the magenta, not pink. Is it the same? I feel like it's the same. You're just gaslighting me that there's a difference. No. ChatGTP told me so. Chat would not lie to me. Okay. All right, whatever. It's magenta. And then let's get rid of the colors on these for now. All right. All right, so I'm going to repeat these down here, the numbers down here, and I'd like to use conditional formatting on these ones. So I'm going to copy this down so that because the conditional formatting to all of them will make it so I can pull them over to the other places. So I'm wondering if I go over here, the problem with the conditional formatting, like if I select these and I say conditional formatting, look at the rules, it puts these dollar signs and makes them an absolute reference, which really is annoying because I want to use the format painter to paint it elsewhere. So and it's not as easy to fix it, but this is absolute. So let's just check it out. Let's format paint this and see what happens. We might have to redo it. This is again Excel. You need to do better with this conditional formatting thing. Work needs to be done here, okay? But it looks like it did kind of what we wanted. So it's K12 to 18. So I think it's doing the right thing. All right, that looks right. Good. All right. Right, that's good. That's real good. Law, dog. Law just don't go round. Okay, I don't know. I have a movie lines in my head. Okay, let's go ahead and then let's add some cells because I'm gonna add this table now. I'm gonna add these tables. So that's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Need like 8 columns. Let's just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's just do it out to here, whatever. As long as I've got enough, I can always delete later. All right. So let's just, don't need to get too technical. Go back on over and just copy this whole thing. Copy this whole bad doggy thing. We'll copy this and then paste it. Let's get rid of this. Why is that there? I don't know what that's doing there. Get that out of here. It's a waste of space, man. This column is just a waste of space. So that gives us then the modal half-step color system, and that gives us the color system for the distance color system. Okay, so given all that, how can we apply that then to the chords. Okay, now I think the most logical thing to do is to say, I'm in essence going to build my chords from modal chord constructions, meaning I know what the root is. Now again, to do this right, and it makes sense. Again, I think this just is another way of letting us know that this is a better system to use functionally, which would be to name the chords by the mode, which again, obviously is a better thing to do because it tells you more about what you're actually doing. It tells you that it's a major and minor chord, and it tells you what note you're playing from and the general space around that note, the whole shape around it from a guitar standpoint or any standpoint, right? It should so why am I saying that? Because what I want to do is say I don't want to use a color system, like the two color systems that would make sense, right? Would be either I use a color system that's based on the notes. So any chord that's red, any chord that's an A would be some kind of red. So that would mean that I don't care if it's an A minor or an A major, it would have to be red or some kind of different red, right? But no, what I'd rather do is to use the absolute color system that's based on the nodal points. That makes more sense. So we based this color system based off of the key of C, but we're going to apply this color system to all 12 collections of 7 notes. And if we think about chord constructions as in essence just building a chord from the scale by skipping every other note, modal whole steps, the same color system maps on beautifully to our chords as well. So that means to use the color system, I can't just say it's a major chord, right? Because the major chord from a modal standpoint could be an Ionian, it could be a Lydian, it could be a Mixolydian chord. No, I need to say it's the one chord. It's the Ionian chord. That's the green chord. If it's a Lydian chord, you can call it a major chord, but it would be a lot more specific, and you could tell that by being able to color code it by saying it's the Lydian chord. The Lydian chord is a major triad chord, but it's the 4 chord. It's different. The 4 chord is different than the 1 chord. And then the Mixolydian chords, you can call it a major chord, but it's better to call it a Mixolydian, and then we can apply out the magenta color to those chords. All right. So then the question is, well, how do I apply out the color system to the chords? Because it could be a 3-note chord, a triad, a 4-note chord, which adds the 7 from a scale degree standpoint, or a 5-note chord, or 6 up to 7 notes. So I'm going to use a color system that basically goes from light for a 3-note chord, and as we get heavier, more complex chords, it gets darker. So what I did is I won't force you to show this. I asked ChatGTP, I said, hey chat, I need to make a color system, and I know you're good at this stuff, dude. So what I want you to do is take like this yellow green, which is 8OFFOO from a hex system. That's at a 0.5 lightness. And I want you to make a lightness scale going from 0.9, 0.7, 0.5, 0.3, 0.1, meaning it's going to get lighter. It goes from goes light to dark. And so if you ask chat and I say, chat, could you give me that and give me the number and the formatting? And then chat will be like, no problem, dude. At least if you're cool with him like I am. But I'll give you a good word. So he'll do it. So he'll work with you because you're my friend. So we'll paste that here. So you get something like this, right? So now I have this color system. So if it's a 3-note chord, just a triad, it's going to be a light green, but the green is all the same green as the Ionian node, which is what we called yellow green. It's the same yellow green, but it's lighter. The lightness factor is now at a 0.9. And then a 4-note chord, which adds the 7 to it, if you think about it from a scale degree, right? Or in other words, it adds every other note from the Ionian, is going to be 0.7 lightness. A 5-note chord, which would add the 9 from a scale degree standpoint, is going to be 0.5, and then a 6-note chord, 0.3 gets darker, see? So I can just apply these out. So let's, for example, I'll just format paint this out, and I'm just gonna call this, that's gonna be this color. So if I look at the Ionian mode, let's just recap this as we color code it. We're gonna say I'm building chords off of the Ionian mode. And I wanna think about the chords not like some random group of chords without tying it to a collection of notes, right? The whole point is to tie the chords to a collection of notes that you're working in, because that functionally is helpful, right? So it's nice to do things that are functionally helpful. So we're gonna say this is an Ionian, so it's a short, and so you could normally call it a C major, which is great, but that could be the Ionian major, that could be the Lydian major, or the Mixolydian. So I'd rather call it an Ionian C2 chord, or you could call it a 3-note Ionian chord. The reason I call it this is because it's an Ionian chord, which means it's a major chord because an Ionian is a major scale. We don't even really need the C. You could actually drop the C if you wanted to, because you already know the collection of notes that you're working in. And then it's a 2 instead of a 3 because it's 2 modal whole steps. The full distance to the last note is 2 modal whole steps. A modal whole step is 2 half steps. So that means it's going to be the Ionian node plus 2 notes. That would be the 1 plus the 3 node Phrygian, 4/5 node Mixolydian. All right. So if I was to build that, so if we build that out, we could say the modal half steps are going to be from the Ionian. You take that note and then go 2 modal half steps and then 4 modal half steps, or 2 and 2. That would give you the scale degrees of a 1, 3, 5, because the scale degrees are off by 1. It should be measuring from the 0.024. And then that gives you the modes, which you can actually define the scale by, which would be the Ionian point, the Phrygian point, and the Mixolydian point. The 1, 3, 5 modal points are what creates the chord. All right, well, what if I add another note? I'm gonna make that heavier or darker from a color system, and we'd say that would be called a C major 7. I'd like to call it just an Ionian 3 chord. Now you could call it a 4-note Ionian chord. The reason I call it an Ionian 3 is because that 3 is a distance term, which means that the last note is 3 modal whole steps from the Ionian node. So that means that now we have the modal half steps are 0, 2, 4, 6. The scale degrees, therefore, all off by 1, 1, 3, 5, 7. And the nodes are once again the 1, 3, 5 Ionian, Phrygian, Mixolydian, and now we have the Locrian, the 7 node. All right, let's add another one here. I add another color. So now we're on a 5-note chord. A 5-note chord. I'll just grab that and say that would be adding the 9 from a scale degree. So it'd be a C major 9. I'd like to call it just an Ionian 4 chord, which would be a 5-note chord. The reason I call it an I4 chord is because it's going to be the node we're on, Ionian, and the last node will be 4 modal whole steps up. So that will once again get us our points. You can actually name the points. It would be the Ionian, the Phrygian, the Mixolydian, the Locrian, the Dorian, or the 1, 3, 5, 7, 2. All right, and then we've got that one, which was a 4. So that, and now we have this one, which is going to be a 6-note chord. So with a 6-note chord, boom, 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 that would be out here. We would add the 11 from a scale degree. Oh man, something happened. I didn't copy the formatting. Let's grab the format painter. And then boom. So now you got a C major 11. I'd like to just call it an Ionian 5 chord, or a 6-note Ionian chord, right? It's because now we're just going to be adding the next note, the 11. The 9 is equivalent to the 2, and the 11 is equivalent to the 4. These are compound intervals. You don't really need those if you just say, hey, look, just take just take 5 whole steps from the node you're on, 5 modal whole steps, not note whole steps, modal whole steps, and you're good. That would be the easier way to say it without inventing like new terminology like compound intervals when the normal interval is already mess. It's already a mess, the normal interval. Don't get me started on this because, and then a 6th note would be here. And so then you'd have a C major 13. I'd like to just call it, and the 13 is equivalent to the 6 compound interval. I'd like to just call it an Ionian 6. Why? Because you're just going to start on the Ionian and take 6 modal whole steps till you get to the end, right? So it's going to be a 7-note chord. It's got every note in this. That's how that would be the most logical way to do it. But that's not the way we do it because they're trying to confuse you. People trying to confuse you, man. I'm telling you. There's a conspiracy theory out there. Thing was put together by Joe Biden or something. I don't know. He can't come up with a conspiracy. What are you talking about? I don't know. There's something happening. There's something fishy going on here because this ain't right. So let's say we go from the next one up. So what I did is I said, hey chat, give me this color, but give me the same spread of 0.9, 0.7, 0.5, 0.3, and 0.1 on the green. So this is going to be the spring green. We're going to build a Dorian, which will be a minor chord. And so I could just do the same color. I'm just going to grab this one and say, if it's just a triad, we're going to have it be the light spring green. So that's going to be the light spring green color. And it would be a minor chord, but the minor chord could be a 2, 3, or a 6 chord. It'd be more specific to call it a Dorian chord. It's a triad Dorian chord, for crying out loud. If it's on the D, you can say it's a DD2. But you don't even need to know that it's a D if you know the collection of notes you're in, because you could just name it by the Dorian, and that would be easier. This, by the way, will give you a way to say if it's the tonic, because you could say it's a small Dorian, D, or a big Dorian, which could give you an indication of that is not only a Dorian chord, but it's the tonic chord, right? And that would be useful. That'd be a useful thing in our system. So we could then say that if you add another one, now you're adding the 7. Normally that would be a D minor 7. I'd like to call it just a D3 chord, which would be a 4-note Dorian chord, just taking 3 modal whole steps up from the Dorian node. That would be the easy thing to do, and you could just count it out. What if I do a 5-note chord? Well, then normally they're going to call that a D minor 9 chord, and they just made up a 9. Wait a second, that's not the right color. It's not the right color. Don't get ahead of yourself. Slow down. Then it would be a D minor 9. I'd like to call it just a D4 chord, which would be a 5-note Dorian chord, right? And you can actually figure out the nodes. How? Because you're just going to start on the Dorian, which is a 2, and then go 2 up, 4 up, 6 up, and 8 up, or 2, 4, right? You go 2, 2, 2, 2 if you start on each of the points from a modal half step, which would give you the 2 Dorian, the 4, which is Lydian, the 6 Aeolian, the 1 is Ionian, and the 3 is the Phrygian. See? That's how you should do it. And then let's do this one, a 6-note chord. A 6-note chord, then they call that a D minor 11. I would just call it a D5 note chord, which would be a D5 chord, which would be a 6-note chord, not a D, because that's the note. You could add a DD5, which would be a Dorian D note 5, but you could just call it a D5 chord because I'm in the collection of notes around the C major. So you already know, it's redundant to say it's a D if you know the collection of notes that you're in, which you should, because that's the easiest way to be thinking about the whole thing. And then if it was another one, it would be a D minor 13, which I would like to just call a D6 chord, which would be a 7-note Dorian chord. All right. What if we went down to the next one and we built chords off of the 3, the Phrygian? That's going to be another minor mode. I would say I went to chat and I said, hey, chat, take this sky blue number right here, which is at 0.5, and give me the range. Give me the range, the same range that you've been doing here, because I want to get this done so I can go home on the range. And chat gave me this. Boom. There it is. No problem. Chat's cool with that. So we're going to grab a 3-note chord. So Phrygian 3-note chord would be an E minor. Notice these two look the same, but they're not, because you should call it. It'd be better to distinguish them, right? Wouldn't it be nice to know that there's a different place where you build those? I would just call it a P2 chord, a Phrygian 2 chord, or a triad Phrygian chord, meaning it's starting on the Phrygian and then you go 2 modal whole steps up, which would then give you the modal points of the Phrygian node, the Mixolydian node, and the Locrian node. Those are the 3 continents that you'd hold down with your fingers to play it. What if you add another note? Well, then you'd add the 7, which would be a minor 7 because it's a minor chord. You could call that an E minor 7, but easier to call it just a Phrygian 3 chord or a 4-note Phrygian chord, just skipping every other modal point in it. All right. What if we got to go faster because you're taking too much time? What if it's a 5-note chord? Well, if it's a 5-note chord, what you do, that would be an E minor flat 9, I believe, but it'd be a lot easier just to call it a Phrygian 4 chord or a 5-note Phrygian chord, just taking every other one as we've described before. I don't want to be too redundant here. I think you get the pattern, but it's a little frustrating that we have to explain this, because this should be the way that everybody explains it, and people don't do it right. Let's do the last one here. So I feel like it's all on us to explain it. Look at this. I think this is right? This would be an E minor 13 flat 9 flat 13, which is, I believe that's, I don't want to, but this is the worksheet I did a while, but you would think it would just be an E6 chord or a 7-note, a Phrygian 6 chord or 7-note Phrygian chord, which would be a lot, because you shouldn't have to do weird things if all of the notes are in the key. Anyway, let's go to the next one. So now we're going to say, hey, chat, give me this color, but break it out again. So chat's going to be like, okay. Chat got tired one time and gave me the wrong numbers because they had like the lightness went up and then back down to like where it was. So I had to tell chat like, dude, you messed it up, man. But then chat was like, oh, sorry. And he fixed it. Like, so it wasn't even a problem. But you do have to watch out a little bit. So this one's going to be Lydian. So it's going to be an F major. So we're back to the majors here. But I would like to distinguish that we're playing it from the Lydian position on the fretboard, which is going to be then a Lydian 2 chord or a 3-note or triad Lydian chord, because that gives you the actual points, which is going to be a Lydian continent, Aeolian continent, and Ionian continent. All right, let's just copy these over with less discussion this time, because I think we get the general concept here. So we're just going to apply this out across the board. We don't need to rant on it. We all see the logic. And we completely agree with the logic, because not agreeing with logic is illogical. And so try not to do that. That's why we have to build our own system here, because stuff don't seem right. It don't seem right, man. I'm going to say, let's do the next one. Hey, chat, give me the give me the Mixolydian magenta. Take that color and break it out to our color system. And chat's like, okay. Don't feel bad for chat. We're giving chat lots of work, but chat likes to be useful. Chat's happy to work. We're gonna say this is gonna be a G major. So again, I'd like to call it a G second chord. I mean, a Mixolydian second chord, which you could say a Mixolydian G, an XG2, but you could just say it's a Mixolydian because that's the node in the collection of notes that we're in, which in this case would be the collection of notes around the C major, right? And then so then I could just say it's the Mixolydian continent in that collection of notes. But if we don't know if we need to know the note, then we have to. You get the idea. So let's just copy this across. You're talking too much again. Just keep talking, man. You're a talker. Need to have a doer. I don't like talkers. Okay, I'm gonna do it now. I do stuff too. I don't just talk, but sometimes I could like talk and do stuff at the same time. I feel like it makes the time go past. It's kind of like whistling while you work because you talk while you work, and then it makes it better. But whatever. So we're gonna go then to the Aeolian. So we're like, hey chat, take this red because it's gonna be the Aeolian and do the same thing with that one. And chat gives me then the Aeolian. Aeolian. So that's gonna be the minor, the main minor, I should say. So that's gonna be the main minor. So they call it an A minor. I'd like to just call it an A2 chord, which would be a triad or a three-note Aeolian, right? And that would be the points of the 6, 1, and 3, because it would be the Aeolian node, and the last note would be 2 modal whole steps up from there, which you could just count out if you know the Nashville number node that you're on. That would be the most logical, systematical way to do it, I feel like. Now I've thought about this. It's not like I just pulled this out of nowhere. I have thought about it. Oh, you think you know better? You think you know better than I don't. I'm just saying that I have thought about it. Other people probably have thought about stuff too, but I think I'm right. I feel like I'm right on this. I'm gonna say we're gonna put this over here. You think you're the only one that's thought about it? You think you're the only one? Okay, so let's go to the Locrian. Locrian is gonna be this one. Hey chat, take that one and give us our color breakout. And then so once again, chat breaks it out for the final time. And we're like, this is crazy yellow Locrian. Not the yellow, he's crazy. It's okay. As long as you pursue with caution. That's gonna be the diminished. So it'd be a diminished. And so I'd like to just call it'd be really easier if we just call it an N2 chord or a 3-note Locrian chord, right? And then boom. So this is like, and then it would be built the same way. You just take 2 modal whole steps up from the Locrian node. That would make it a lot easier. And then they use this other convention to give it a half diminished when you add the 7, which I don't want to get into again at this point, but it would be a lot easier to just say, well, why don't we just call it an N3 chord or a 4-note Locrian chord, because then it would be built the same way, and it would be, you wouldn't have to make up a whole new category, you know? And then they have to call it a B half diminished 9. And so now you made up a whole new category and you used a compound interval when you could just call it a Locrian 4 chord or an N4 chord or a 5-note Locrian chord, which means you just take the node you're on, and then go up 4 modal whole steps, taking every modal whole step, and the last one's 4 modal whole steps up. That would be way easier. Way easier. Not just like kind of easier. You say, well, why do you have to change it? Why don't we just, because I'm not sure it's way easier. Way, way, way easier. That's why. Okay. I don't know what happened here. I mean, if it was just like half a way easier, like kind of easier, then okay, maybe I can see like we go with, but like if we're talking like way, way, way easier, then action needs to happen. Action needs to happen. There's no more this. You can't justify. Man, I think I've missed one. Okay, let's do this again. This one, the 3. So this should be 1, 2, 3. Should be this one. No. That one looks right. So now I'm on 4. That's this one. So it should be 1, 2, 3, 4 should be this one. That one's wrong. All right. One more round. All right. And then we'll copy this over here. Okay. So now I could color code the rest of it as well here. So let's see what else we can do to this thing. Because this is a modal point, so I could color code this with the points. So like, which would be these. So I'm going to grab this color coding, which is done with the conditional formatting, and I'll just say boom. Let's put that right there. And I could color code these because those are going to be the point color coding. So I'm going to grab the conditional formatting here and say boom. And then I could use that same conditional formatting here because the conditional formatting doesn't recognize capital and lowercase. So I could just grab that and put it here. And then this one, I don't think I have a conditional formatting for those, but I could just grab this whole thing, which is not conditionally formatted, but I could just copy the formatting that is there and paste it over here. And I think that would be fine. And then I could do the same thing here. I could grab that and just paste it here. But I think I'm going to need another conditional formatting for this abbreviation because we use those multiple times over here. So that'll make it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to these abbreviations here and do the conditional formatting. So let's do this. I'm going to format paint this one, paste it here, and then go into the conditional formatting and just change the rules so that it works. So like this first one should be ION. So I'm going to just change it to ION. Boom. Apply. That one's green. This one needs to be DOR. Capitals don't matter. So I'll just lowercase is fine. And then this one is going to be PHR. I wish capitals did matter. I wish they took that into consideration. But again, they didn't. These are room for improvement. Here, Excel team, if you're listening, I have some suggestions. Most people, they're not going to listen to my suggestions, but they should listen because I know what I'm talking about. I know, well, I have ideas. And I'm going to say this is going to be the Locrian. Okay. Okay, and then we can grab those. And people think you don't know what you're talking about, but I do know. And I'm just going to grab this all the way across So now we can color code all these. So these are showing the modal points for each of these chords, which again, no one really uses because of the scale degrees, because it messes up the absolute modal point system when you change the numbering system for the scale degrees, right? So we kind of lose that for a lot of people, but we need to bring it back. We need to bring it back, and that's what we're doing here. We have a cause, we have a purpose. That's why we forge forward, because we're making the world a better place. Not because it's color, because the color has meaning. We're putting meaning into the color. Usually when you see this color stuff, you know, it's not conveying good meaning stuff. So we're gonna fix it, and do something. We'll just paste this across. All right, man. So there we have that all the way across. Almost there. Almost there. And then we can do that here, 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 and then here, here, oh, here, here, boom, and boom. And then these modal systems, I could do the same thing for those. So I could just grab the conditional formatting here, and we can take that across. So that should be same here, boom, 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 and we'll grab that, and then bring it here, boom, grab it here, boom, and then boom, and then boom, and then we'll grab it here, and we'll go boom, and then boom, and then boom, and then boom, and then bam. You thought I was going to say boom, but I switched it up. Switched it up. Just when you think the rhythm pattern is staying the same, that's when you got to throw a little bit of a twist in there. Give it some flavor. Give it some. That's what we're doing here. So let's go on over, and we have these here, and that looks good. Muy B to the N, bien. How you bien? I'm muy bien. Muy bien. Okay, let's save this. All right, so then we could also, this one needs to be color coded here. These are scale degrees, but these are modal half steps. That's our gray system over here. So modal half steps, we had our gray scale, our shades of gray. That's how we measure modal half steps. So I can grab those into all of the modal half steps, which are all these. So this is 0 shades of gray, and then it takes a modal whole step, which is 2 modal half steps, and then this is 2 modal whole steps, or 4 modal half steps from the start, or 2 half steps from this one, meaning we go from the Ionian node to the Phrygian to the Mixolydian, or 1 plus 2 to 3 plus 2 to 5. So the 3-note Ionian triad in any 12 7-note collections has the Ionian node, the Phrygian node, the Mixolydian node, because we go from the first node up by 2 to the third node up by 2 to the 5th node. All right, so let's go ahead and grab that one and do that all the way across. So modal half steps. Boom. Can't do it with scale degrees, but I could grab this and put that there. And then I'm going to grab this modal half steps, put it there. Now we have 8 modal half steps. That's further than we normally go because that's equivalent to 2. That's an octave up. That's why it didn't populate a shade of gray. But I'm not gonna get too. I'm gonna leave it the way it is. I'm just gonna explain to you that's the way it is right now. So we'll just keep it like that, so we don't want to get too crazy. We're running long on time. Too late. You're already too crazy. Okay. That's not nice. Don't want to get too crazy. You should have stopped a long time ago. Okay. Okay. Let's not get personal. I'm going to say, all right. So that's the general idea. So now we can explain each of the chords by a modal chord, and we can give it a color tone as a 3-note chord being the light shade, and then adding the 7, or a 4-note chord being a shade darker. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shades of our chords. So it's going to be a triad is an Ionian is a lime green shade 1, right? And then the Dorian triad is a spring green shade 1, right? Versus a spring green shade 5, which has like all 7 notes, or spring green shade 2, which would then be a Dorian 3-note chord, which would be like a D minor 7, because it has the 1, 3, 5 from a scale degree plus the 7, or in other words, if we start on the Dorian node, we have the last note, which is 3 modal whole steps up from it. So that would be 2, 3, 4, would give you the next note 4, 5, 6, and then 6, 7, 1. So it ends on the Ionian node. I think I had that right. See, so that's great. That's great.